Good morning, Dorcas. How are you today?
Morning, Peter. I'm well, thank you.
Jolly good, jolly good. Well, welcome to the Business Spotlight. Please tell me a little about yourself and your business.
Okay, my name is Dorcas Crawford, as you've heard in the introduction, and I am a recovering lawyer. I was a lawyer for over 30 years and owned my own law firm, Edwards and Company Solicitors, where I gradually progressed from being a trainee right through to being a partner and then ultimately to being the senior partner and owning the firm. And while I was still there, I also trained as a mediator. And so in April 2021, I sold the business, retired from the law, and now work as a consultant in conflict management. So using my mediation skills to help people resolve conflict in the workplace.
Wow, that's quite a journey. That's quite a journey. And so tell me, when you were growing up, is this what you envisaged or always wanted to do?
Definitely not. I don't think mediators existed when I was growing up, actually. I think that's a fairly recent development and a wonderful one, but I don't think so. I did want to be a lawyer, actually. I did from maybe my teenage years. I think when I was younger than that, I maybe wanted to be a car mechanic at one stage just to kind of be provocative with my parents. But yeah, I think I wanted to be a lawyer from I was in my early teens. And so I did go straight from school into law at Queen's and then trained in Edwards and Company and stayed in the same firm for my entire career, which I think these days is virtually unheard of, actually, for people.
Yeah, that's a little round of applause for that. Well done.
No, a round of applause for Edwards and Company because it was an amazing place to work and I loved it. So yeah, I had no reason to go anywhere else, I think.
And tell me, who would be your ideal customer or client?
Well, now in the conflict management consultancy, my ideal clients are senior people in organizations who have the insight to understand that they really need to tackle conflict in the workplace or in the boardroom or at whatever level it is in the organization, and that avoidance of conflict is not a good strategy. So those senior people having that insight and bringing in, either training up their own people or bringing in somebody like me who's objective and external to help them work with the conflict and try and resolve it at the earliest possible stage. Because one thing about conflict is that it will never get any better. It'll only get worse.
I think the pandemic had a huge effect on everyone and every aspect of life and business. Was there anything that was particularly applicable to yourself or that has changed the way you work?
Well, I changed completely the way I work because it was during the pandemic that I actually sold my business. And that was quite a journey because I had just agreed the sale on the 13th of March, 2020. And guess what happened the following week? So it took quite a long time to settle down, look after the staff, get everything on an even keel, and then get back to the sale of the business. So then I moved into this work. And the pandemic has definitely created more problems for people in terms of conflict in the workplace. Remote working has caused a lot of problems because communication in a remote working context is really poor and has suffered very, very badly. So that has been in this work now that I see, that has been a huge impact from mostly that secondary effect as opposed to the pandemic itself and people being ill. There is that factor as well. So it has definitely created more conflict, or at least it has prevented people from making conflict a smaller. Conflict has got bigger as a result of not seeing each other, not being able to have a coffee together, not being able to kind of get on with your day and dilute the effect of maybe something that somebody said in a meeting at 9 o'clock. If that bothered you, usually by 10 or 11, you've bumped into each other in the hallway or you've had a coffee together or something, and that has been diluted. But those kind of very small incidents in the context of remote working have become huge and can become huge because, back to that topic, it's avoidance that basically results in avoidance of the issue. And I have clients who may be very, very senior people in organizations who have literally not been in a room together for 3 years. And the remote working context has allowed them to not deal with, they haven't had to deal with the conflict because it's easier to avoid each other. So that has definitely had a huge impact on the work that I do and has made the workplace probably a more difficult place. Plus the fact that people are really exhausted still. And I think we're only now beginning to realize what we all went through. And I mean, obviously some people went through horrendous things like, you know, losing loved ones, losing family, being ill themselves, etc. But even at the level of not having been ill, having gone through the changes that were so sudden and that just really floored us all, I now am seeing in my work, what that does, of course, is makes us less tolerant, makes us tired. And so conflict at the minute tempers flare really easily. People are not at their best, so they tend to misinterpret actions, etc., etc. So the pandemic has had a huge impact on workplaces that we haven't even really seen yet.
That's really interesting, and it brought back so many things that while there are advantages of remote working, there are also challenges as well. I mean, what would you say has been your biggest learning since being a business owner, Dorcas?
Being a business owner for all those years, not just now, it's easier because there's just me, but when I employed people, I would say my biggest learning and the biggest advice I would give to anybody running a business is look after your people first and foremost, because they will then look after your business and your clients and everybody else. If they feel valued and they feel looked after, that is the key, I think, to a really successful business.
That's a great, you remind me of one of my favorite Richard Branson quotes, where which is intrinsically linked to exactly what you've said there. And it's his was that you train people that they could work for any of your competitors, but you treat them that they would never want to. And that's so
that's
true.
a good line.
So true, so true.
That's a really good line. Yeah.
Who would be the first person that comes to mind when you think about the word success?
Who would be the first? I mean, lots of business gurus that I rated and followed, lots of people that I admired and so on. But the first person that comes to my mind is one of my best friends, and she started a business years ago. And she was a nurse, and she literally, when she started up her healthcare business, when she then started employing nurses and putting them into care homes and so on. But, she was on her own initially. So if a shift came up and she didn't have a nurse to do it, she would go out and do it herself. And she just was so driven, so focused. And now her business is major successful business, is UK wide. And it just is that grit, determination, focus, valuing people, compassionate, lots of those factors that have really made her successful, actually. So she's probably the first person that comes to my mind. And she's a typical Northern Ireland girl.
Good stuff. And what's the biggest challenge that you've faced in your business, or indeed are facing today?
I think in the work that I do now, the biggest challenge is getting my clients, i.e. very senior people in organizations. I do a lot of work for public sector organizations, for charities, etc., and also for private companies. My biggest challenge is getting people to actually deal with conflict early, to recognize that it happens. Conflict can be amazing in a business, in a boardroom. Conflict can be really healthy, but it must be managed properly. So on the other side of my office, which you can't see at the minute, I have a quote on the wall, my favorite quote, which is, conflict is inevitable, combat is optional. And that's such a good quote about conflict, because in a very dynamic business, a lot of my clients run really dynamic, successful businesses. Conflict in the boardroom, for example, conflict about what direction the company should go, etc., is great. Personal conflict is never great, is never constructive. But for me, when I get a client who is the person who says, okay, I see it coming and I really want to deal with it right now, they are my ideal client. And they're also, for me to get people to do that is probably my challenge. So my focus is often trying to get into businesses to train them at the start to say, notice it straight away, look for the signs, diagnose it at an early stage, and then deal with it, tackle it. Don't wait until you've got a grievance lodged. Don't wait until somebody's leaving because they're so unhappy. It's like medicine. Early intervention is the absolute key to getting it resolved. So for me, my challenge is to get the leaders in organizations to realize that and to say, okay, let's do this. And it will change the culture completely. It changes, it costs less, it's constructive. Again, back to that, people feel valued because somebody has said, what's your problem? How can I help you? So yeah, that's probably my biggest challenge, is asking people not to come to me when the conflict is 2 years down the line and they're already in the corners of the boxing ring, to get them to come to me.
It's a good analogy, and I like the quote about the combat and conflict. So tell me, what inspires you, Dorcas? What inspires you today?
What inspires me? I think the part of my work that really inspires me is when I'm able to bring two people into a room. Initially, they have private sessions where I can listen to what their problems are and where the issues have arisen, and they really get a chance to be heard, because one of our problems in the world is nobody listens to anybody anymore. They're usually on their phones or watching TV in the background or whatever it is. So giving them a chance to be heard and actually listen, and then bringing them together when they can actually come together and start to sort out the problem. And that's my job, is to help them do that and find a solution to it. And what really inspires me is when that works. And I would say 90 to 95% of the time, this process works. And when I see them leaving the building where I work with them together, often walking out to their car together, standing, having a chat, when a month earlier, they literally could not be in the building at the same time. I had to see them separately. So that's really inspiring, when people move from a very difficult position, which is causing them a lot of personal pain and hurt, into okay, I can now go back to my job, the job that I love, and I can enjoy it because I'm not dreading bumping into so-and-so that I'm in conflict with.
And Dorcas, I'm sure it wasn't that long ago, but if it were possible, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
It's a long, long time ago. Do you know, that's a tricky question, because I think I've been lucky enough to actually have lived my dreams. And I would say, and I do, probably more relevant questions, what do I say to my children now, who are all in their 20s and who are beginning to work out what their dreams and ambitions are? And I always say to them, in as far as it's possible financially and with other constraints that they might have or we might have, I always say to them, just make sure you know what your dreams are, and do follow them. Do follow them. It is possible in some version. You might have to curb it a little bit financially, or you might have to curb it because of family circumstances or something, but make sure you set your goals, you realize what your dreams are, you think them through, and then go for them. Absolutely.
Brilliant, brilliant. And Dorcas, if somebody wanted to reach out or find out a little bit more about the Better Way, what would be the best way, no pun intended, for them to do that?
The Better Way, not even a better way, but the Better Way.
The Better Way.
My sign behind me, which is the name of the business now, for very obvious reasons, having tried the law for many years and finding there was definitely a better way than that. It's probably my website's the best place to go, which is thebetterway2to.com. The Better Way was taken, sadly, when I set up my business, but so thebetterway2to.com.
Excellent, excellent. Dorcas, it's been absolutely brilliant hearing your journey and your story. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a fantastic end to 2022 and a prosperous 2023. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Peter. It's been my pleasure, and happy Christmas to you too. Thank you.
Thank you.